Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to this comprehensive exploration of Buddhist insights on how to judge someone's character. I'm so glad you've decided to join me. In a world where snap judgments and quick impressions often guide our relationships, it's more important than ever to delve deeper into how we truly come to understand another person's qualities, intentions, and moral compass. After all, if we rely solely on first impressions, we risk misunderstanding, missing out on genuine connections, and even harming others and ourselves through hasty decisions. In this talk, we will draw inspiration from the Buddha's teachings found in the Anguttara Nikaya, as well as stories from Buddhist history, folk traditions, and everyday life, to help us see why real understanding requires time, empathy, and insight. We'll also look at how you can apply these principles in your own life, whether you're evaluating new friendships, partners, colleagues, or even your own habits and tendencies. You might be wondering, why should I spend so much time understanding someone else's character? Life moves so fast. Or you might say, but we need to make decisions quickly. I can't just wait forever to discover someone's true nature. Indeed, that's part of the challenge. There's a tension between the fast pace of modern life and the Buddha's timeless wisdom that urges patience, mindfulness, and an ongoing commitment to deeper understanding. So, if you've ever struggled with judging someone's character, or if you've felt misunderstood when someone else jumped to the wrong conclusion about you, keep watching or reading. We'll discuss the Buddha's own advice on how to discern a person's moral and spiritual qualities over time, real-life examples from ancient Buddhist texts, like the Jataka tales, and historical anecdotes of men and women whose virtues and character traits were revealed only through adversity or long acquaintance, ways to apply these insights in the modern world, at work, in friendships, in romantic relationships, and in everyday social situations. The importance of balancing compassion with discernment, how not to be naive, but also how not to become overly cynical. Practical exercises and reflections for gradually developing the kind of wisdom that allows you to see a person's true colors. By the end, you'll not only have a firmer grasp of the Buddha's teachings on character evaluation, but you'll also have a treasure trove of personal stories, insights, and reflections to guide you on your own journey of understanding others. At the same time, it's my hope that in learning to look more carefully at others, you'll be inspired to look more carefully at yourself. How do I present myself to the world? Am I as virtuous or patient as I'd like to think? How do my own biases shape the way I judge? Let's dive in. And remember, this content is part Buddhist teaching, about 40%, and part personal interpretation, modern examples, and stories, about 60%, which helps us engage fairly with these timeless teachings and apply them to contemporary life. My goal is to keep you fascinated, inspired, and empowered. So let's begin with the words of the Buddha himself as we expand into a deeper discussion. In the Anguttara Nikaya, there's a short but profound teaching where the Buddha explains how to truly understand different aspects of a person's character. This teaching is sometimes quoted when people ask, "How can I tell if someone is truly good, trustworthy, wise, or patient?" Here, the Buddha essentially says that to know a person's virtue, asile, you must live with them over a long period. To know their integrity, you must have real dealings and interactions with them. To know their patience and fortitude, you must observe them in times of misfortune or difficulty. To know their wisdom, you must spend time conversing with them on meaningful topics. Crucially, The Buddha emphasizes that all these aspects of a person can only be known after a long time, not casually, by one who pays careful attention, not by one who is inattentive, by one who is wise, not by one who is foolish. In our modern world, these insights are still perfectly valid. We live in an age of rapid communication. Text messages, social media, quick meetups, and countless fleeting interactions. We often form opinions about people based on a short video, a tweet, or a single conversation. The Buddha's reminder is that genuine understanding requires time, observation, engagement, and our own wisdom. Judging someone on the basis of a single social media post or a fleeting first impression is incomplete at best. Time is essential. You cannot truly know someone in a day, a week, or even a month. Attentiveness is crucial. You have to be willing to observe carefully, noticing not just words but consistent actions and reactions. Wisdom is a prerequisite. If your own mind is clouded by prejudice, fear, or ignorance, you will not accurately perceive another person's character. Why does this matter so much? Because being able to see others more clearly helps us navigate relationships, build trust wisely, avoid destructive connections, and foster genuine bonds. It also helps us develop compassion. When we see that people are more complex than they might initially appear, we might be more forgiving of small mistakes and more realistic about red flags. Now, let me paraphrase the Buddha's teaching in a more conversational way, while still preserving the core meaning. Monastics, if one wishes to know a person's virtue, one must live with them. And this knowledge does not arise quickly, but rather after a substantial duration of time, not just in passing. Moreover, you have to be attentive, not careless, in your observation. And finally, you have to possess wisdom to discern the signs of virtue. One who lacks wisdom will fail to see it. Similarly, if you wish to know a person's integrity, you must engage in real transactions or dealings with them. This, too, only becomes evident over a long period, with vigilant attention and with a certain level of discernment. If you wish to know a person's patience and fortitude, you must observe them during times of hardship or misfortune. Anyone can appear patient when things go well. It's only under pressure that true patience is revealed. This again takes time, attention, and wisdom. Lastly, if you wish to know someone's wisdom, you must converse with them deeply. And once more, this will not be revealed overnight. You must be attentive in those conversations, and you must yourself be wise enough to recognize true insight from mere eloquence. So that's the gist of the text we're exploring. In essence, it's about investing enough time, energy, and discernment to see someone's deeper qualities beyond the superficial. Many of us have formed an entire impression of another person within seconds of meeting them. Psychologists sometimes say that we judge people's attractiveness, trustworthiness, and status in the first few moments. Now, while quick assessments can sometimes protect us, for example, if you sense immediate danger, they can also mislead us. Imagine you meet someone who is having a bad day. They might come across as rude, antisocial, or uninterested in talking. If you judge them based solely on that short interaction, you might miss the fact that they're usually warm, friendly, and kind. Alternatively, you might meet a very charming individual who knows exactly how to make a strong first impression, but who is manipulative or deceitful in the long run. The Buddha's teaching reminds us not to stop at the superficial layer. Instead, keep watching, keep interacting, and keep discerning before you settle on an opinion. Let me share a modern example that illustrates this point. Picture a workplace environment where you have a new colleague who arrives and seems incredibly charismatic. They compliment everyone, they have perfect manners, and they dress well. Over the first few days you think, wow, this person is amazing. However, as the weeks roll on, you notice small inconsistencies. They might dodge responsibilities, blame others for mistakes, or talk behind people's backs. Gradually, the veneer wears off, and you realize that the initial impression was incomplete. On the flip side, you might meet someone who's very reserved, maybe even a bit awkward in social settings. At first, you assume they're unfriendly. Yet, as you collaborate on projects, you find them to be extremely reliable, considerate, and supportive. Over time, they become a close friend, defying your initial prejudice. These scenarios happen all the time. Someone looks perfect at first glance, while someone else looks imperfect. The only way to know for sure is through sustained observation and real interaction. This is exactly what the Buddha was pointing to. The Buddha uses the word sila, often translated as virtue or moral discipline. In Buddhism, sila typically refers to refraining from harmful actions such as killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and intoxication. But it also refers more broadly to moral conduct, to the presence of kindness, honesty, and consideration toward others. When the Buddha says you have to live with someone to know their virtue, he implies that you see them in their private moments, not just how they perform or present themselves publicly. Virtue is often displayed or betrayed in everyday habits, how someone treats service staff, how they behave when they think no one's watching, how they handle minor irritations at home, and so on. In the time of the Buddha, monastics often lived and traveled together. Lay people would also visit monasteries or invite monks to their homes. Living in close quarters or spending extended time in someone's presence was a normal part of daily life. This proximity made it easier to notice whether a person consistently practiced the Buddhist precepts or only paid lip service. One famous example from the early Buddhist tradition is the story of two monks traveling together, where one was outwardly very strict and proper, while the other seemed more casual. Over time, however, it became clear that the stricter monk was harboring ill will and resentment, whereas the seemingly relaxed monk was actually much kinder, more patient, and more sincere in his practice. If you only saw them in a short snapshot, you might assume the first monk was the more virtuous. But living together over weeks, you'd discover the truth. Today, we might not literally go live in someone's home, but consider that living with someone could mean ongoing friendships, collaborations, or other close forms of engagement. Maybe you share a dorm in college, go on a long trip, or work together for months on a project. In such contexts, you see how a person reacts under stress, how they handle responsibilities, and whether they practice what they preach. If you're assessing a potential roommate, romantic partner, or close friend, keep the Buddha's teaching in mind. You'll need more than a handful of coffee meetups or text conversations to truly know their moral fiber. Only through repeated, continuous interaction can you see their patterns of behavior, how they speak, and how they handle everyday ethical choices. Integrity is about honesty, trustworthiness, and reliability. A person with integrity tends to keep their word, own up to mistakes, and treat others fairly. The Buddha suggests that to judge someone's integrity, you need real dealings with them. Basically, test the relationship through some form of shared enterprise or mutual exchange. This is both practical and profound. Words are cheap. Actions are telling. Throughout Buddhist literature, the importance of right livelihood and honest dealings is paramount. Lay Buddhists are encouraged to conduct business ethically, not to exploit or cheat. If someone claims to be a good person but consistently cuts corners or lies to get ahead in business, that discrepancy reveals something about their integrity. An illustrative story is that of a merchant who tried to sell inferior goods at inflated prices to unsuspecting buyers. Outwardly, he appeared generous and devout, making lavish donations to temples. But his day-to-day commerce was riddled with deceit, which ultimately caught up with him when those cheated customers raised complaints. Only after real transactions did others discover his true nature. Today, we might test integrity through simpler means: financial transactions, lending or borrowing money, splitting bills, or going into a business venture together. Does the person pay back on time? Do they handle shared finances responsibly? Collaborative projects, working on a group project at school or in the office. Does the person carry their weight? Do they give credit fairly? Volunteer or charity work? If you volunteer together, do they show dedication or do they slack off? Do they respect the people they're trying to help? Such real dealings will reveal whether someone is consistent and transparent, or if they hide behind a facade of goodness. Perhaps the most telling aspect of a person's character is how they behave when the chips are down, when life isn't going smoothly. The Buddha points out that anyone can appear calm and composed when life is easy, but genuine patience, khanti, becomes evident when one faces hardship. Misfortune could be anything: financial crisis, health problems, loss of a loved one, or social conflict. How a person deals with these challenges reveals their inner strength, resilience, and capacity for compassion or understanding. In many Jataka tales, stories of the Buddha's previous lives, the Bodhisattva, the being who would become the Buddha, is tested through misfortune. In one well-known tale, the Bodhisattva was a prince who lost his kingdom and had to endure significant hardships. Despite these losses, he remained calm, compassionate, and steadfast in his moral principles. These stories underscore the Buddhist view that real character is proven when life turns difficult. Another example from the Pali Canon is the story of Patakara, a woman who lost her entire family, her husband, children, and parents, within a short span of time. Though she initially succumbed to grief and madness, she eventually found solace in the Buddha's teachings, demonstrating incredible resilience and becoming a revered figure among the followers. Observing such transformations and sustained commitment to virtue in times of incredible sorrow is a testament to a person's inner fortitude. In modern life, you might see this when a friend loses their job or faces a serious health issue. Do they lash out at others? Do they sink into bitterness and blame? Or do they remain hopeful, kind, and open-hearted despite their suffering? Similarly, if you're uncertain about someone you only know in good times, pay attention to how they handle adversity. That will often tell you more about their true character than anything else. This principle is at the heart of the Buddha's teaching. We need real-life tests, situations where the person's patience is genuinely tried, to know who they are beneath the surface. In Buddhism, wisdom, panya, is not merely intellectual knowledge or cleverness in debate. It's insight into the nature of reality, understanding impermanence, suffering, and the non-self. It's also practical wisdom, the ability to navigate moral choices skillfully and compassionately. When the Buddha says we can only discover wisdom through conversation, he highlights that wisdom is often revealed through dialogue, questions, and deeper discussions. You might talk about moral dilemmas, philosophical questions, or life challenges. Through these conversations, if you pay close attention, you can perceive whether the person has genuine insight or is just parroting ideas. The Buddha often engaged in dialogues with individuals from different walks of life: kings, peasants, ascetics, householders. Sometimes a person would approach him with eloquent words but shallow understanding, whereas a humble farmer might ask a few direct questions that showed a remarkable depth of wisdom. One famous example is the encounter with the young novice Sopaka. Despite being just a child, Sopaka had incredible insight into the Dhamma because he had listened intently and reflected on it deeply. On the other hand, there were learned scholars of the day who couldn't grasp the essence of the Buddha's teaching because they were trapped in their own intellectual pride. We can apply this principle in our own conversations today. When you talk with someone about life's deeper questions, purpose, ethics, relationships, compassion, observe how they respond. Do they respond with cliches? Do they become defensive or dismissive? Or do they engage thoughtfully and offer perspectives that indicate they've really thought things through? Keep in mind, though, that someone might not always express their wisdom in overtly spiritual language. Wisdom can reveal itself in simple kindness, genuine curiosity, or thoughtful problem-solving. Nonetheless, the Buddha's point stands. You need to converse with the person sincerely and for a significant duration to gauge their depth of understanding. A key phrase in the Buddha's teaching is, not casually, but after a long period. This is a direct nudge for us to slow down. We live in a society that rewards speed, instant gratification, immediate updates, quick success. But real understanding of character cannot be rushed. We might ask, how long is long? There's no fixed number of months or years. Sometimes you can learn a great deal in a matter of weeks if you are in an intense situation together, like traveling or working on a big project. Other times, it might take years of steady acquaintance. The point is not to jump to conclusions. The term continuous engagement can help. If you only see a person at parties or social media posts, your perspective remains limited. But if you engage them in day-to-day life or keep in touch consistently over time, you accumulate more data points. You see them in different emotional states: happy, sad, stressed, relaxed. You witness their interactions with different types of people: elders, children, strangers, subordinates, superiors. That range of observations helps form a more complete picture. Let me share a personal viewpoint. Over the years, I've met people who left a glowing first impression, only for me to realize their deeper intentions were self-serving. Conversely, I've also encountered those who seemed distant or aloof initially, yet they turned out to be some of the most sincere, genuine, and reliable companions. This has taught me that my initial judgments are often incomplete. So, whenever I meet someone new, I remind myself, give it time. Be curious rather than certain. The Buddha highlights the need for close attention. This means we can't evaluate someone's character while being distracted or only half present. If you're always on your phone, always consumed by your own thoughts, or always rushing, you'll miss subtle cues about a person's behavior. Wisdom also implies freedom from excessive bias, whether positive or negative. If you adore someone for superficial reasons, maybe they remind you of a favorite celebrity, you might overlook red flags. If you dislike them because of some prejudice, you might dismiss their good qualities. A wise observer tries to see things as they really are, which ties back to the Buddhist concept of right view. Understanding reality without being clouded by greed, hatred, or delusion. Another twist here is that to judge someone else fairly, you need self-awareness. If your own mind is swirling with insecurities, jealousy, or unrealistic expectations, you might project those onto others. Regular meditation or reflection can help clear the mind of distortions, allowing you to perceive someone's character more accurately. Buddhism strongly emphasizes compassion, karuna, for all beings. But compassion doesn't mean naively trusting everyone or ignoring harmful behaviors. Rather, it means recognizing the shared humanity or the shared capacity for both good and harm in each of us. On the other side, it's easy to become cynical if you have been hurt or betrayed. You might adopt a mindset that nobody is trustworthy. The Buddha's approach is more balanced. Test people, observe them, but remain open to the possibility of goodness and growth. Sometimes someone might fail a test of character initially, but learn from their mistakes. If we never offer second chances, we might miss their redemption. Buddhist compassion suggests that while we should be cautious, we should also remain open to the possibility that people can change, especially if they show genuine remorse and effort. To bring these ideas to life even more vividly, here are some extended real-life anecdotes, fictionalized composite stories, but representative of common experiences, that underline the theme. Story. A young entrepreneur named Layla was searching for a co-founder for her startup. She met Alex, who had a fantastic resume. Top schools, polished presentation, a network of high-profile contacts. He seemed like an absolute dream partner, confident, articulate, and well-liked at business events. For the first month, everything was smooth. Alex spoke grandly of expansions, investments, and strategies. But when real challenges arose, like tight funding and the need to put in extra hours, Alex's enthusiasm waned. Layla noticed he'd show up late, delegate tasks without follow-up, and vanish when it was time to handle tough negotiations. Eventually, Layla discovered Alex had inflated some of his credentials. He wasn't a bad person per se, but he lacked the grit and honesty to handle the startup's pressures. Had Layla gone purely on her initial impression, she'd have never suspected this. Over time, through real dealings and adversity, his true character became clear. Lesson: you need actual transactions and adversity to reveal a person's real level of commitment and honesty. Story. Tom lived in an apartment building where each resident mostly kept to themselves. One neighbor, Sarah, rarely said more than, "Hi." She never joined the neighborhood barbecues or chatted about local gossip. Tom assumed she was cold or antisocial. One day, Tom had an accident and hurt his back. To his surprise, Sarah knocked on his door offering homemade soup, help with errands, and even arranged for her friend, a physical therapist, to give him a discount on sessions. Over the following weeks, Tom realized Sarah was simply shy in groups, but deeply caring one-on-one. Sometimes it's only through misfortune, Tom's injury, that hidden kindness and compassion emerge. Judging Sarah solely on her social behavior would have been misleading. Mark was known at the office as the data guy, always crunching numbers with minimal small talk. He rarely participated in water cooler banter, so many colleagues assumed he lacked interpersonal skills or interesting opinions. However, one day, Mark struck up a conversation about the environment and personal responsibility. He spoke with thoughtful insight about sustainable living, referencing scientific research and moral implications. Colleagues who had pegged him as a one-dimensional nerd found themselves drawn to his calm, reasoned wisdom. Over a few weeks of deeper discussions, during coffee breaks and after-hours gatherings, Mark revealed a profound understanding of ethical considerations and compassion for the planet. Meaningful conversation can unlock hidden depths in people. If you rely on surface impressions alone, you might completely miss someone's wisdom. King Pasenadi of Kosala was a contemporary of the Buddha. Initially, he was quite taken by certain ascetics and teachers who flattered him, praising his kingdom and wealth. Yet, after discussing deeper topics with them and seeing how they behaved over time, he realized that not all who appear saintly are truly wise. He then began visiting the Buddha, whose wisdom became evident through repeated interaction and Q&A sessions. This shift from superficial trust to deeper discernment is a prime historical example of learning how to judge a person's or teacher's qualities over time. Devadatta was a cousin of the Buddha who initially seemed like a dedicated monk. He had the trust of many. However, over time, his jealousy and ambition for power led him to attempt to create a schism in the monastic community, and even harm the Buddha. Had the community judged him only by his early days of apparent zeal, they would have been gravely misled. This story illustrates the danger of forming conclusions prematurely. Real character can take time to surface, especially if there's ambition or envy lurking beneath polite exteriors. Slow down. Don't rush to form an opinion about someone new. Make it a practice to hold off labeling them good or bad, boring or exciting too quickly. Observe context. Notice how they behave in varying situations, relaxed versus stressful, private versus public. If possible, collaborate on a project, plan an event, or volunteer together. Nothing reveals integrity like shared responsibility. Ask meaningful questions. Move beyond small talk. Ask how they deal with challenges, what they value in life, or how they see the world. Don't pigeonhole. If someone starts off on the wrong foot, remain open to the possibility they might redeem themselves. Likewise, remain cautious even if someone initially seems flawless. Look for growth. People can change. Check if they learn from mistakes, apologize sincerely, and show genuine improvement over time. Self-reflection. The more you understand your own mind, the more accurately you'll perceive others. Regular meditation, journaling, or mindful living can sharpen your insight. Study and reflection. Learn from the Buddha's teachings, from wise mentors, and from your life experiences. The better you understand human nature, the better you can judge character. Some people might say, but in Buddhism, aren't we told not to judge others? It's true that Buddhism encourages non-judgmental awareness. However, that primarily refers to refraining from harsh condemnation, prejudice, or unskillful labeling. We're encouraged to see people with compassion rather than condemnation. What the Buddha is describing here is a discerning, careful evaluation, not condemnation. There's a big difference between saying, "This person has harmful behaviors, so let me keep a healthy distance or address the issue," versus, "This person is irredeemable scum." The first is discernment. The second is unskillful judgment. Should I just forgive everyone unconditionally? Forgiveness is indeed a powerful virtue in Buddhism. But forgiveness doesn't mean allowing toxicity into your life. You can forgive someone, recognizing their ignorance or suffering, yet still choose to protect yourself and maintain boundaries. As the saying goes, forgive, but don't forget. Or, more skillfully put, forgive, but learn from the lesson. It's easy to think we're discussing only how to judge others. But a deeper application of this teaching is to reflect on how others might judge us. Do we display virtue consistently over time, or do we only appear virtuous when it's convenient? Do we show integrity in our dealings, or do we sometimes cut corners? How do we respond to misfortune? Do we lash out, or do we remain patient? One of the beauties of Buddhism is that any teaching about how to view others can also be applied inwardly. If I realize that real virtue is shown through consistent action, I might strive to be more consistent myself. If I learn that patience is revealed under stress, I might work on cultivating patience so that I don't fail the test when adversity hits. The three poisons in Buddhism, greed, hatred, and delusion, can distort our ability to see someone's character. If we're greedy, we might latch onto someone who promises wealth or benefits, ignoring their flaws. If we're full of hatred, we might interpret someone's neutral actions as malicious. If we're deluded, we might fail to discern skillful behavior from unskillful behavior. The Buddha's emphasis on right view and right mindfulness specifically supports careful observation. Right effort helps us remain vigilant in our quest to see the truth, including the truth about someone's nature. From a Buddhist perspective, character is deeply linked to karmic patterns. Past actions shape present tendencies. While it's not always our place to judge someone's entire karmic trajectory, understanding that we all carry our own karmic baggage can foster patience and compassion. We realize that no one is beyond redemption, yet also that deep-seated habits can take time to change. In the early stages of dating, people often put their best foot forward. This teaching reminds us not to rush into believing we fully know the other person. It's prudent to see how they act over time, especially when things get tough. How do they handle disagreements? Are they respectful even when frustrated? Do they keep their promises and treat your boundaries seriously? Friendships can blossom quickly, but deep trust is cultivated over shared experiences. If you find a friend is always there in good times but disappears when you're struggling, that might reveal a lack of genuine empathy. On the flip side, a friend who stands by you during adversity demonstrates their sincerity. For managers or team leaders, it's tempting to promote someone who interviews exceptionally well. But the Buddha's teaching would suggest we also observe how they perform under pressure, how they treat subordinates, and whether they uphold company values. We live in an era of digital personas. People can project a very curated image on social media. To truly know someone's character, you need deeper engagements than just liking or commenting on their posts. If possible, communicate in private, or spend time offline together. Observe how they handle real-life responsibilities and challenges. You might wonder about the balance between quoting Buddhist texts and adding personal opinion, especially since fair use, as mentioned, often involves transformative or interpretative content. As we've explored, Buddhism provides the core framework: time, attentiveness, wisdom, real dealings, and adversity as tests of character. My personal opinions weave in as modern interpretations, expansions, and examples, helping to clarify how these teachings might look in contemporary life. This synergy between ancient insight and present-day perspective is, in my view, the essence of applying the Dhamma here and now. Now that we've covered the Buddha's guidelines and offered numerous examples, I encourage you to practice them in your own life. Start by noticing how you currently judge people. Are you too quick to label them? Have you ever realized later that your initial assessment missed the mark? Reflect on those instances and see if you can approach new relationships or even existing ones with a fresh perspective, allowing more time and deeper observation. When you are about to form a judgment, pause and ask yourself, have I seen this person in different contexts? Have I had meaningful, deeper conversations with them? Have I observed them under stress or conflict? Am I paying attention, or am I distracted by my own biases or preconceptions? By asking these questions, you engage in a mindful process that aligns with the Buddha's guidance on discerning character. One thing you might notice is that the Buddha's advice is elegantly simple. Time, observation, dealing, conversation, and adversity. Yet, its implementation can be profound and life-changing. It requires daily mindfulness, patience, and humility, acknowledging we don't know everything about someone right away. This teaching exemplifies one of Buddhism's greatest strengths. It doesn't rely on complicated dogma or leaps of faith, but on careful, direct observation of reality. We can apply it anywhere, anytime, with anyone. At this point, let's recall the quote shared in the original transcript. It is easy to judge. It is more difficult to understand. Understanding requires compassion, patience, and a willingness to believe that good hearts sometimes choose poor methods. Through judging, we separate. Through understanding, we grow. This captures the spirit of what the Buddha taught and how we can benefit from it today. Judgment often builds walls. Understanding can build bridges. And if we do have to judge for practical reasons, like deciding who to trust, let's do so in a way that's measured, compassionate, and wise, recognizing the complexity and potential within each human being. Before we conclude, I want to expand on a nuanced point. People are not static. They grow, change, and sometimes regress. The Buddha's teaching about evaluating character over time implies an ongoing process. You might think you've fully judged someone's character after a year of knowing them, only to find they transform significantly in the years that follow. This is why an open mind, combined with healthy caution, is paramount. It's healthy to protect yourself from toxic behavior. Sometimes that means stepping away from relationships that prove harmful. But it's also healthy to stay open to a person's evolution. If someone sincerely commits to ethical growth, they might become far more virtuous than they once were. In some cases, we need to rely on the judgments we've already made, especially if the trust has been broken repeatedly and shows no sign of repair. Buddhism doesn't ask us to be doormats. Yet we must remain vigilant against cynicism or bitterness. It's a delicate balance, and it's where personal discernment, our own wisdom, becomes essential. Let's summarize the main takeaways succinctly. Time. No instant judgments. Understanding a person's virtue, integrity, patience, and wisdom requires continuous observation over a substantial duration. Attention. You must be mindful and attentive, noting how they behave in different contexts and how they speak in meaningful conversations. Wisdom. Your own clarity, free from biases, allows you to interpret what you observe accurately. Tests of character. Real dealings reveal integrity, adversity reveals patience, and deep conversation reveals wisdom. Compassion and discernment. Maintain a compassionate outlook, but don't ignore red flags. Balance trust with caution. Apply to yourself. Reflect on how you show up in the world. Do your actions match your words? Do you practice patience under stress? By keeping these points in mind, you can cultivate a more nuanced, empathetic, and accurate way of relating to others. If you'd like to deepen your practice, try this exercise over the next few weeks or months. Pick a relationship. Could be a new friend, a coworker, or someone you want to know better. Journal your observations. Without being creepy or overly critical, note how this person behaves in various situations: stressful, happy, mundane. Record your impressions, being careful to note the difference between observable facts and your subjective interpretations. Look for patterns. After a few weeks, review your notes. Do you see consistent traits or changing behaviors? Where might your biases have colored your impressions? Engage in meaningful conversation. If it's appropriate, share deeper discussions with them. Ask about life views, challenges, or aspirations. Observe how they respond. Reflect. Over time, notice whether your initial impression has changed. How has mindful observation helped you form a more rounded view of their character? This exercise helps internalize the Buddha's teaching because you're actively applying time, attention, and a degree of wisdom in a controlled manner. It also fosters compassion as you see the person more holistically. We've covered a lot of ground here, everything from the specific sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya to real-life stories, historical examples, and practical applications. I hope this extensive discussion has helped illuminate why the Buddha's teaching on judging character is so timeless and relevant.